Most people today would freeze if the heater broke for one night, but back in the 1300s, there was this guy named Toma, a peasant. No firewood, no help, just a stubborn winter biting through the cracks of his tiny house. And somehow, he didn't freeze. He didn't panic. He did what his father taught him, what his grandfather whispered over the fire. He remembered, and that memory, it kept him alive. We like to think we're smarter today, but when it comes to surviving winter without electricity, Toma might have been way ahead of us. He didn't have heated blankets, no smart thermostat, but he had something better. A house designed to trap warmth, a daily rhythm, time to the sun, and tricks so clever scientists today are still taking notes. So how did Toma and millions like him make it through winters with no heaters, no rescue plan, no second chances? Let's step into his world and see how it worked. Technique 1. The semi-sunken house. I used to think medieval peasants just slapped together some wood and straw, called it a house, and hoped the wind wouldn't knock it over. But then I met Toma. Not in real life, of course, but in the pages of forgotten history. Toma lived in the 1300s, high in the mountains. No heater, no backup plan, just snow goats and grit. And somehow his little hut stayed warm without firewood most of the time. How he built into the ground, 3 feet deep. Not quite a basement, not quite a hole, just enough to use the Earth's natural insulation. See, the ground holds heat way better than air. Even when it was freezing outside, that sunken floor stayed mild like a natural thermal blanket. Recent archaeological studies show these semi-sunken homes were up to 10 degrees Celsius warmer than surface dwellings in winter. It wasn't just about digging a pit, though. Toma's home was low-ceilinged on purpose to trap warmth. His windows tiny, no bigger than a loaf of bread. Every inch of design was intentional, focused on one goal: keep the heat in. The walls were made from wattle and daub-woven sticks smeared with a thick paste of clay straw and manure. Yep, poop. Literal poop walls. But here's the crazy part. Those poop walls worked. Modern tests show they insulated almost as well as basic fiberglass. They also absorbed moisture and kept mold out, acting like a medieval dehumidifier. So when someone today complains their house is drafty, I picture Toma sitting under a thatched roof, wrapped in scratchy wool, surrounded by mud and manure, and still alive. Because his house wasn't just shelter, it was memory. A system passed down over centuries, tested by wind, refined by snow. No fire, no heater, no help, just memory. Technique 2. The daily sunlight schedule. People think medieval peasants just woke up with the rooster, stumbled outside, and did whatever needed doing until it got dark. No clocks, no plans, just vibes, right? Yeah, not quite. Toma, he had a schedule that would make a military sergeant proud. And it all started with the sun. Every day he tracked the light like his life depended on it, because it kinda did. The most precious hours between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when the sun was highest and the air warmest. That 4-hour window was everything. That's when Toma hauled firewood, fixed the thatched trimmed hooves, met with neighbors, or loaded bread into the communal oven. Not before, not after. Because if you missed that window, the cold would catch you, and it didn't let go. Turns out this wasn't just Toma being efficient. It was village policy. Manor court records from 1267 show entire communities had sun-based work schedules. People who missed the high sun hours were fined. One guy in northern England had to give up 3 dozen eggs just for being late to his assigned firewood duty. Some villages even had frost watchers officials who checked temperatures using frozen clay pots and icy walls. If they rang, the horn work stopped. Everyone indoors. No arguments. Afternoons were slower. Work moved inside. People conserved heat. No one wanted to be caught outside when the warmth dropped like a rock. Compare that to today, where we sit under fluorescent lights eating lunch at 3 p.m., ignoring the sun entirely. Toma didn't have that luxury. He lived by rhythm. The light told him when to move, when to rest, and when to retreat. No phone, no weather app, just a lifetime of watching how shadows fell on the wall. And when winter hit hard, that rhythm could mean the difference between surviving or not. No fire, no heater, no help. Just memory. Technique 3. Hearth and smoke insulation system. We picture a fireplace as cozy, crackling logs, hot cocoa, someone reading poetry in a sweater. Toma's fireplace, not even close. His hearth sat in the dead center of the house. No mantle, no chimney, no comfort. Just a stone pit filled with coals, slowly warming the air, the food, and the people. There were no separate rooms, no kitchen, no living space. Everything happened around that fire, eating, cooking, talking, sleeping. Because when you only have one heat source, you don't put it in the corner. You build your whole life around it. The hearth wasn't just about warmth. It was survival strategy. Toma's hut was designed to let the smoke rise and stay. No, really, he didn't vent it out. The smoke formed a thick layer just below the roof, acting like a warm, smoky insulation blanket. Sounds awful. Yeah, it probably was. His eyes stung. His lungs burned. His thatch roof turned black. But that smoke did 3 important things. It slowed heat loss by trapping warm air near the ceiling. It kept bugs and rot out of the roof. It extended the roof's lifespan, sometimes doubling it. Archaeological digs of 13th century homes show that smoked thatched roofs lasted decades longer than clean ones. And inside, even with snow, outside the hearth could hold the room at 50-60 degrees. Not exactly spa weather, but a whole lot better than freezing. Modern folks would run for the ER with that much smoke indoors. But for Toma, it was normal, because warmth wasn't about comfort. It was about balance, smoke in the eyes, fire in the heart, cold at the door. He didn't have a furnace. He had a system. And it worked. No firewood delivery, no vents, just memory passed from calloused hands to cracked walls. No fire, no heater, no help. Just memory. Technique 4. Communal heat and shared warmth routines. Today, staying warm is personal. You've got your own thermostat, your own blanket, your own heated socks. Back in Toma's world, warmth was a team sport. When winter hit hard, no one survived alone, not even Toma. His village had an entire system to trap and share warmth built on rhythm duty and a whole lot of body heat. Every family took turns on frost watch. At night, while others slept, one person stayed up tending the fire, checking neighbors' hearths, watching for drops in temperature. If you skipped your turn, you didn't get a slap on the wrist. You paid in chicken's eggs or firewood. One manor record from 1291 tells of a man who fell asleep during his shift and had to give up half his winter fuel. Ouch. But the clever part wasn't just the rotation. It was how they used people as heat sources. Villages held evening councils in the largest house not to debate politics, but to survive. Dozens gathered at sunset discussing chores while their combined body heat raised the room temperature by up to 5 Fahrenheit. It wasn't just a meeting, it was medieval central heating. Toma always showed up early, not because he liked people, but because standing in the middle meant he'd be warmer. There were even bedtime coordinators. The last family to bank their fire was responsible for checking that all others had safely buried their embers. If they forgot, they got bumped to the coldest sleeping spot the next night. You think HOA rules are strict? Try sleeping next to the drafty door because you missed fire check duty. The system worked because it wasn't based on comfort. It was based on cooperation. When you depend on the heat of others to stay alive, selfishness goes out the frosty window. No fire, no heater, no help, just memory. Technique 5. Insulated bed platforms and sleep positioning. Today, we think of beds as comfort, memory foam, heated blankets, 2 pillows or 5. But for Toma, bedtime was strategy. His bed wasn't soft. It wasn't even really a bed, just a raised wooden platform padded with straw angled slightly upward like a reclining bench. And it wasn't just him on it. Toma shared the space with his entire family. 4, 5, sometimes 6 people packed shoulder to shoulder, not for love, for heat. Archaeologists call this shared thermal mass. We call it human radiators. And they weren't just piled together randomly. There was choreography to it. The youngest and oldest slept in the middle. The warmest adults took the edges. As people woke in the night to check fires or tend goats, they rotated spots, keeping the warm core alive. That reclining angle, exactly 15 degrees. not an accident. It helped warm air circulate and reduced cold air contact. Modern studies of reconstructed medieval beds show that this position reduced heat loss by up to 30% compared to lying flat. And the height, precisely 18 inches off the floor. Why? Because cold air settles low. Raising the platform meant sleeping above the frost line and closer to the heat rising from any livestock below. Some families even built their beds directly over the cow stall. Medieval underfloor heating with mooing. One manor record from 1290 mentions a sleep inspector, someone who literally checked that families weren't spreading out too far. Why? Because space between bodies discourages heat loss. And during deep winter, that could mean illness. Or worse. Modern folks worry about snoring roommates. Toma worried about freezing. So they spooned, they stacked, they rotated like clockwork. Not for comfort, for survival, because when warmth was scarce, sleep had to be smart. No fire, no heater, no help. Just memory. Technique 6. Winter clothing layers and animal fat waterproofing. You know those medieval movies where peasants run around in flimsy tunics, half shivering mud on their knees. Yeah, completely wrong. Toma wouldn't last an hour dressed like that. In winter, he wore armor. Not metal, but layers. Wool. Over wool. Over even more wool. His base layer woven from scratchy nettle fibers blended with soft wool, itchy sure, but brilliant at pulling sweat away from his skin. On top of that came progressively thicker layers, lighter wool inside, heavier wool outside, each one trapping warm air like a natural puffer jacket. But it didn't stop there. Toma didn't wash his winter cloak, ever. Not because he was lazy, because he was smart. Unwashed wool keeps its lanolin, the natural grease that makes sheep waterproof. Washing it out meant losing that magic. One 13th century text even warned a clean cloak is a cold cloak. Still not waterproof enough, no problem. Toma rubbed deer fat and pine sap into the outermost layer. Greasy, yes. Effective, also yes. Modern lab tests on recreated medieval cloaks show that fat-treated wool can resist heavy rain for up to 4 hours, almost as good as a modern raincoat. And when reapplied every few weeks, it stayed that way through winter. Some villagers even added bark ash or beeswax for extra water resistance. Whatever worked. The result, a waterproof, breathable, wind-blocking winter suit made from sheep sap and stubbornness. And here's the kicker. All those layers didn't make Toma look ridiculous. They made him alive. Because medieval clothing wasn't fashion, it was survival engineering. No Gore-Tex, no thermal underwear, just memory stitched into every sleeve. No fire, no heater, no help, just memory. Technique 7. Livestock heating and indoor animal placement. Some people today let their dogs sleep at the foot of the bed. Toma let a cow sleep under it. In winter, animals weren't just livestock. They were heating units. Toma's home wasn't big, but part of it was built specifically to house animals. Not in a separate barn, but inside the living space. Why? Because cows are big, warm, and always breathing. One adult cow can raise the surrounding temperature by 3 degrees Celsius. Now multiply that by 3 cows, a few goats, and maybe a dozen chickens, and suddenly your icy hut feels survivable. But it wasn't just about stuffing animals indoors. There was strategy. Cows went near the sleeping area, premium heat. Pigs went near the food storage, moderate warmth. Chickens, they filled in the corners. Tiny but surprisingly effective. And they didn't just sit on dirt. The floor was layered with straw and ash, a medieval composting pad. The animals' body heat, plus the slow decomposition of their waste, created gentle warmth all night long. Modern reconstructions show that a setup like Toma's could keep indoor temperatures up to 10 degrees C higher than outside, even with no fire at all. It was messy, it was noisy, and yes, it smelled, but it worked. Some manor records even mention animal heat inspectors officials who checked that families had enough animals indoors to meet survival minimums. One record from 1295 fined a family for trying to claim their skinny cow gave off the same heat as a fat one. These people knew their biology, and they used it well. Forget electric heaters. Toma had a four-legged furnace named Bruna, and she never ran out of fuel. No thermostat, no insulation, just memory, and a barn that breathed. No fire, no heater, no help, just memory. Toma didn't survive the winter with luck. He didn't have gear, or backup, or second chances. He had memory, a system carved into the walls, whispered by firelight, passed down through frozen nights and frost-bitten hands. He lived in a sunken hut, slept on raised straw, wore 5 layers of greasy wool, and shared heat with goats and neighbors, not because he wanted to, because he had to. He watched the sun. He shared the fire. He buried embers and body heat like treasure, and somehow he made it. Not just for himself, but for the ones who'd come next, because survival wasn't about what you had. It was about what you remembered, and maybe what you pass on. So if even one of these tricks lit a spark in you, don't let it fade. Try it, practice it, teach it, because one day when the lights go out and the cold creeps in, you won't be reaching for a switch. You'll be reaching for memory. No fire, no heater, no help, just memory. If you found this valuable drop, a comment, share your thoughts, or pass it on, because these old systems, they only survive if someone remembers.